So I'm gonna try to do the most stupid thing, I think, at least, that I have ever attempted to do, and that is to rank the top 15 best records in my sort of favorite genre, really, and that is Swedish progressive music and psychedelic music. Now, I have made a video before. I think you can watch it here, but it was many years ago that I made that video. It still holds up. There's the facts are all right, and the records that I'm showing is partly some of these that I'm going to show you today. But I have gathered a lot of records, maybe some that is on this list also. So check that out if you want. That is more of an introduction. This is the top 15 in my opinion. And I also want to say that I don't have all psych records in the Swedish catalog, not by far, and there will be stuff that is lacking in this. And it's also a bit controversial maybe because I don't show you November, for instance, which is a very highly rated sort of group amongst the heavy psych enthusiasts of Swedish music. So, but in no particular order. Cue music first. So in 1973, I'm going to start off with my most beat up copy I have, but it's the one I have. It's Älgarnas trädgård, the Garden of the Mooses. And this is on Silence Records, which is one of the most important labels here in Sweden. When it comes to progressive music and psychedelic music anyways. This piece of art, this piece of music, this collective of that was made up of Älgarnas trädgård is a total gem. It's a lot more leaning against the sort of the krautrock foundation in my opinion, even if this has elements of Swedish folk and stuff like that. And with this sort of painting or cover artwork, it makes it on the top 15 of Swedish psychedelic records. And we're on our way! Nice. Again, and in no particular order, 1971, also Silence Records. And I don't know if I'm showing this too early in the video, but sadly, the sort of music history in Sweden isn't the women's sort of trade, is it? But this is headlined by a woman here in Sweden. This is Turid, and she's backed up by some of the absolutely best musicians that Sweden has ever produced, in my opinion. This is a fantastic record of half and half Swedish songs and songs sung in English. It's a gem. Everyone should check this out because it's a singer-songwriter, progressive psychedelic masterpiece, in my opinion. She almost had an international career, but she wanted to stay in Sweden, and she released records up till, I don't know, 80s maybe, something like that, on Silence Records. This is one of the best ones, definitely, and top 15 in my opinion. Moving away a little bit from Silence Records, for now at least, and we go to Decibel, is I don't know if this is the best record, the top 15 of best music-wise records in Swedish psychedelic music, but it's one of the most important, and it's 9.5 out of 10 at least. This is Trädgårdsstenar, their debut record that they released on Decibel. A short-lived small record label. I don't know if they even made anything else than this, but yeah. And this is that sort of jam-based progressive rock from Sweden that I really love. A pinch of Swedish folk music, a pinch of the jam-based sort of happy-go-lucky Grateful Dead mentality, and experimental lust from Bo Anders Persson. This is a fantastic record. Fantastic. And on the top 15 in my opinion. Skål! So, moving back to Silence Records. Yeah, I know. This is from 1976, so a little bit later, but nonetheless super important, and maybe one of the sort of the last classic folk-driven psychedelic records here in Sweden. In this period, I mean, there are still musicians and records produced today that has that sort of tradition, but 1976, I think that in my collection at least, this is one of the late ones from this period. This is a total gem, and a little bit more on the folky side, mixed up with a little bit spacey rock. Check it out. It's a masterpiece, and definitely on the top 15 in my opinion from my collection. Going back a little bit, and this is on one of the big labels actually, that was released in Sweden. This label held people like Vinylsnack and a lot of other big named artists, and they also did give this guy a chance to do a record, and it turned out to be a success. This is Jodade with PROG, and this has been sampled by DJ Shadow. That's why it's popular out in the sort of on the international collecting terrain. But it's a fantastic record. You should check this out. Even if it's sung in Swedish, it also has a made-up language in between. It's poppy, and it's only a trio record. It's Jan Karlsson playing the drums and Joey Wadenius playing the bass, and we will talk about those guys in just a minute. But yeah, PROG, his first record, and his first 3 records are fantastic. This is the best one in my opinion. Very, very like down to earth, but great produced. Top 15. The same year, 1969, that PROG, and with the same guy that played bass, Joey Wadenius, but in this case he sings and plays the guitar, and that's why, or not why, but that's the way that he later became famous in the late night show or something like that in the States. Fuck it. Made in Sweden. I could as easily take Made in Sweden's Made in England record, which I think is a more sort of easier to get and more popular record, but this is the one that I play the most from the Made in Sweden catalog. Of the ones that I have, I think I have most of them. Not the Regnbågsvagn. Fuck it. This is a gem. A fantastic sort of jazz rock record. More on the sort of the jazz psych leaning than flat out progressive or folk or just psychedelic. A lot of jazz elements, but it's fantastic. Great. 1969. Snakes in a Hole by Made in Sweden. Yeah, in 1971 they only made 1 record, and it's the second most valuable record in my collection. This is Life. A very short-lived band that went on to do great things in Swedish progressive music later on, like Saga and stuff like that. Resan, I think also. None of them are on my list, but this is definitely on the list. It was released in Sweden 1970 or 71, 70 maybe, sung in Sweden. But when they recorded it, they also made an English version, only pressed in like 99 copies, and was to be sent out internationally, but it never did. And God knows how many copies is out there today. I have one of them, and this is a rare ass record, and it's great. This the English version. Wish I had the Swedish version. I mean, to have them both, but I'm glad I have the English version one. This is progressive pop or heavy blues, easy to like. Yeah, I don't know. It's really, really easy to get into, and highest of all recommendations. And maybe one of my favorite ones, really. It sums up everything that I love with Swedish progressive music from the 70s. And this is 73. It's on Silence Records once again. You have Turid playing on one, or singing on one song of this. And this is the fantastic Kebnekaise. The band and the self-titled record. I think it's called like Kebnekaise 2 in some sort of like when you talk about it, but it's just self-titled. Kebnekaise is the highest mountain here in Sweden. A bombastic name of a band, but well deserved. It sounds just like this: a collective of great hippie musicians making folk-driven progressive music at its best, and this is one of those epic ones, definitely on the top 50. And you can't really make a list of the top 15 best records of Swedish progressive music without talking about this total sort of masterpiece of a record. And I kid you not, this is a masterpiece. There's not a single bad minute on this one. Kvartetten som sprängde, the quartet that blew up with Kattvals, Cat Walls. One of the best record covers ever made, in my opinion. This is just gold all the way through. And on the very short-lived Gump label, they only made like 10 records or something like that, 12 maybe, but all of them are progressive masterpieces. So, Kvartetten som sprängde is prog music all the way through, but with a heavy splash of the classic Swedish folk music, the traditional folk music, maybe also a pinch of jazz, but don't let that scare you. If you want to sample one song, sample the very well-known Gånglåt från Valhallavägen, I think it's called. Gånglåt från Valhallavägen, yes. The last track on the first side, it's like a 10-12 minutes long song, and it's to die for. And how can you do this sort of list without talking about this? Top 15, I mean, there's no sort of, yeah, this is way up there. Maybe top 5 even. And a lot of people knows about this because this went viral and international. But the record I'm talking about, and this is the Swedish original artwork, this is Bo Hansson's Lord of the Rings, or Sagan om ringen. One of the best. Once again, on Silence Records, they sold the rights for this to Charisma, I think, the label that housed Genesis, and they ripped Silence off. They never saw a dime of the sales for that record, and it sold pretty well. So Bo Hansson died sort of like alone in an apartment. Very, very sad. One of the biggest ones in Swedish sort of music history, and this is a masterpiece once again. This is the pillar of progressive Swedish music. Yeah, Sagan om ringen. Again, Silence Records. Again, 1971. I mean, this sort of label, progressive music at its finest. Once more, this is Fläsket brinner. And it also has some connections with Bo Hansson. He plays on this, and one of the songs is called Bosses låt, Bosses song. Yeah, Gånglåten, the first one, fantastic. But the entire record is a masterpiece, as is the cover artwork. One that every sort of collector of Swedish progressive music should have, or have already in their collection. Fantastic. Definitely top 15. And this is maybe cheating a little bit, because if it's anything, it's maybe a little bit more leaning against jazz, or even beat or mod music or something like that. I don't know if it's that progressive or even psychedelic, but I'm gonna show it anyway, because I think that it's one of the most important pieces of music from this time period, and I think that it spurred or inspired musicians from this time period. Maybe I'm talking shit here. It is 1970, and this is Doris Svensson, and she did a record, the last one. She made 2, but this is the last one. Did You Give the World Some Love Today, Baby? Also sample, I think, because this is also very popular and sought after internationally, not only in Sweden. And it's expensive. This is our original press. This is expensive to get to today. I bought it just in the right time before it skyrocketed. I'm so glad I did. Not a bad song on this. And the title track, Did You Give the World Some Love Today, Baby, should be the sort of national anthem of Sweden or Europe even. I don't know. Highly recommended. And yeah, made it to the top 15. Yeah. And again, maybe a little bit more towards the jazz or the fusion side of progressive music, psych music, popular music from this time period in the 70s. But hey man, if Made in Sweden made the cut, then top 15. I have to give it to Solar Plexus. Solar Plexus' first record, a 2 LP set. This is to die for, and the song Boya Bass is just Again, Jojje Wadenius playing on this one, that they played on PROG's record and played on Made in Sweden. And you also have Slim Borgud, who was a drummer in Made in Sweden. But then you got Carl Axel and Monica Dominic, which were two profiles here in Sweden. I don't know if she's still active. I don't know. But Monica Dominic, big artist, and I'm so glad that she made a cut. I mean, I decide what records I want on my list. But I mean, they're so. I mean, Doris, Turid, but that's it. And now we got Monica Dominic on the list, thank God. So, moving on. So, in 1968, no one wanted to release this record in Sweden. So, Bo Anders Persson had to go to Finland to get this released. And they did on Love Records. And this is the next to last record I'm going to show you. This is International Harvester with Sov Gott Rosemary. Sleep Tight Rosemary. With that iconic album cover. I want to do a t-shirt out of this, but I don't know where to begin really. And the Love Records label looks like that, the Finnish Love Records label. And they had a sort of a daughter label here in Sweden called the Love Records Sweden or something like that. So maybe this is that, I don't know. But yeah, highest of recommendations. This is Bo Anders Persson at his finest, in my opinion. And I play this more often than Trägäsa Stenar and Hemot, I have to admit. One of my favorite records of Swedish progressive music. And definitely top 15. And the last one, 1967. So probably the latest of all the records that I showed you. But this is also the one that I recommend maybe amongst the highest of the records I'm showing you, because this should cost $300. This should cost $300, but you can get this for like €30, $30 or whatever you want to call it, 30, 40, somewhere along that line, in really nice condition. And the reissue from 2015, I think, is more expensive than the original press. You get a piece of Swedish music history from 1967 and you pay €30. You don't even get a pizza and a Coke for that amount of money. And I'm talking about the fierce, the mammoth of psychedelic music, Hansson and Karlsson. They made some records. This is the best one, Monument. They played with Jimi Hendrix when he was in town. They had their own club called Club Philips, I think, where they played like the house band. Just drums and organ. Groundbreaking, revolutionary, and the music still holds up today. It's jazzy, it's funky, it's folk, it's psych, it's prog, it's everything. And popular music from that time period, late 60s. Yeah, on Polydor Records, everyone should own this. Even if you're not into Swedish progressive music or psychedelic music, this is one to get, because you can get it fairly cheap. And it's a masterpiece. So that's it. That's my top 15 of Swedish psychedelic records and progressive and a little bit folk and some jazz in my collection at least. Do you agree? Do you not agree? Please comment. This is why we do this. I show you records, but I expect you to give me something in return, and that is your opinions. So please write in your comments if you liked it, if you disliked it, if I missed something out. You know the deal. And obviously, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe if you like my videos, and give this a thumbs up, because if you do, Swedish music will be stared out to more people, and more people need Swedish progressive and psychedelic music, don't they? Well, until next time, I see you then. Bye.